2575. That's 877-384-2575.
Hi, everybody. This is Santita Jackson. Join me on The Santita Jackson Show, Mondays through Fridays, 6 to 8 a.m. morning drive on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley. The Kremlin says yes, Presidents Putin and Biden could meet if they think it's necessary, as the West tries to keep Russia from invading Ukraine. The AP's Jackie Quinn on word that the U.S. and Russian presidents have tentatively agreed to meet.
The White House says it is committed to
sending Reverend Uri through.
Russia appears to be continuing preparations for an all-out assault. France has been able to broker.
Reverend Uri, how are you?
President Biden and Russia's Vladimir Putin.
I'm well. Good morning.
Wonderful.
Doesn't even Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get the last of this.
That's what we're trying to do. We're
trying
to a handful of world leaders engaged in a flurry of phone calls last night, working out.
Your family's well?
Blinken and Russia's foreign minister are set to lay the ground.
Everybody's well.
Good.
The U.S. Embassy in Moscow is advising Americans in Russia to have evacuation plans that do not rely on help from the U.S. government. China is ramping up a feud with the U.S. Beijing says it will impose new sanctions on U.S. defense contractors Raytheon Technologies and Lockheed Martin because of their arms sales to Taiwan. Authorities are investigating the cause of a police helicopter crash along the Southern California coast that killed one Huntington Beach officer and critically injured another. Police Chief Eric Parra on the chopper crash that killed Nicholas Vela, a 14-year veteran with the police department.
An officer that was truly dedicated to his job, that was doing what he loved doing. And this is a tragedy that we are investigating.
Chief Parra heard there on KABC TV. Queen Elizabeth has COVID, says Buckingham Palace. She's got mild cold-like symptoms. This is AP News. The last of the Afghan Kabul in August left the New Jersey military base over the weekend.
Okay, Reverend, can you give us some sound? We can make sure that we are.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Great.
Sounds good over here, too.
That sounds good? Okay, great.
With help from organizations
great.
Okay. Isn't over. Successful resettlement and immigration, it doesn't happen.
Right. Reverend, I'm always at, this is like my crunch time before I've got to
and the U.S. still plans
get back up here. Hey everybody, how you doing, Renee? And
Uncharted, which brought in
Dave Dowling was up first, sending him much love, sending all of you much love today.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT.
Okay, we're going to be talking about, of course, Ukraine. Got to talk about that.
We are Chicago's progressive.
And everybody, please like and share the show today. But will we be going to war? Okay, we're going to be talking about. And do we have an appetite for it? I think more and more Americans do not. Pastor, what do you think?
And we have a slow spot on
well, I agree. I mean, the focus now is certainly what's going on now that we're coming out of COVID, right? There's only so much bandwidth we have to pay attention to things. 2 years of a pandemic has taken a lot out of folks. I don't think there's the budgetary commitment nor the emotional commitment to have to deal with another conflict.
Fire has also spread to adjacent buildings, and as a result, Richmond Street is closed both ways between Cullum and Montrose because of the fire. That's traffic. I'm Bonnie Green.
Get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Hey, Ray Mariozzi here. I don't know about you, but my car could use a few upgrades. I mean, the 8-inch tear in the driver's seat does have sentimental value since my butt has molded to fit it, but I'm ready to move on. My solution? eBay Motors. They've got all the right parts at the right prices. 122 million of them from
60 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
When I get that new seat, I think I'll put the old one in the living room, right next to the minivan seats, or as we call it, the sectional. eBay Motors. Let's ride.
I will be right by your side.
Women can have it all, including heart attacks. But symptoms like jaw pain, nausea, unusual fatigue, dizziness, and backache are often different and more subtle than for a man. The fact is, heart disease is the #1 killer of women.
Okay, just give me a little bit more time. I'm about to download something else. Okay.
Okay.
So if you just give me just another.
WCPT 820.
I'll just hold. No, I'll hold on to this. I'll do it during the break.
Are you sure?
I will. Yeah.
Okay. Stand by 10 seconds.
Thank you.
I'm not sure where he is now.
It'll take a
but I know
little
you can
more
find
than
him
that.
Saturdays at 11. He'll be right here on WCPT 820. Program. Mega Worldwide.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Happy President's Day, everybody. Happy President's Day. That's right. We celebrate the birthday of George Washington and President Lincoln. Indeed, Frederick Douglass did not know his actual birth date, so he chose the middle of February. And so it's celebrating. I think of Frederick Douglass as kind of like a president, too. Not kind of, sort of. Absolutely. So, everybody, I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today on Monday, February 21st, 2022. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, as I come to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT, taking over the reins of Air America. That's right. That's what we used to be. But today we're WCPT, and I am also on AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Wow, have you had quite a interesting few days. Kim Potter, the police officer who shot and killed Daunte Wright, got 16 months. What do you think about that? I want you all to call me today and let me know what your thoughts are. And let's talk about Ukraine. Are you willing to go to war over Ukraine? Are you willing to send one of your relatives, your beloveds, over to Ukraine to fight? Now, President Biden, for his portion, has said that that's off the table, at least for now, but they've also said that they're going to send thousands of American troops over there. Whenever you're talking war, troops are never off the table. That's what they do. So I want to hear what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Did you see the NBA All-Star game? My father went, and he had a great time. Oh, wow, fantastic. Well, it was Team Durant versus Team LeBron. And guess what? In Cleveland, guess who won? Oh! Team LeBron, 163-160. It was nail biter, everybody. And Steph Curry, of course, is the MVP. Congratulations to everybody in the NBA. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 44 degrees, today. Scattered showers. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 21 degrees. They have a winter storm warning. You do have that up there today. And you're going to have snow showers. And we're supposed to get an Arctic cold blast throughout the week. So everybody, please take care of yourselves. Please take care of yourselves. AT&T is shutting down its 3G network on Tuesday. The move will impact people still using 3G Kindles, 3G flip phones, the iPhone 5 and older models, various Android phones, and some wearable devices, everybody. Ahmaud Arbery was chased down and fatally shot 2 years ago. It's hard to believe. On February 23rd, 2020, a jury found that the three white men charged in the guilty killing found guilty of killing him. Well, it turns out that there was racial motivation. It seems that the prosecution was able to prove that case. I keep wondering why they did not use that in the state case, but they did use it in the federal hate crime case. And so the focus of the ongoing case last week zeroed in on the offensive language and the racist posts from the McMichaels. And we'll see where this all goes. Saturday is the 10th anniversary. Can you believe it? Of the killing of Trayvon Martin by George Zimmerman. Wow. He was, of course, a black high school student who was going out to get some Skittles. Wow. Killed by his neighbor, George Zimmerman, who was put on trial in 2013 and was found not guilty, everybody. Let's get some good news from Pastor Todd Geary today. We sure do need it as we're talking today about living in a different world. Queen Elizabeth was certainly wishing her the best. She has COVID-19, but she has gotten all of her shots. And so apparently although she is symptomatic, they're saying the symptoms are mild, but she is 95, so everyone is watching it. So makes me think, Pastor Todd Geary, when I think of my 80-year-old father and my 77-year-old mother, people who are 65 and older are really at great risk. I'll just put it that way, when they get COVID. So when I thought of this elder getting COVID, I said, "Ooh, God bless her," and I'm glad that she's getting the best of care. I wish everyone could get that kind of care. Pastor Todd Geary, pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland, and of course, vice president of Rainbow Push. What's the good news today?
Well, good morning, Santita. I'm not sure. Let me start with this. You got a heat wave in Chicago and a snowstorm in Minneapolis. I'm not sure. That doesn't sound real fair to me.
We're getting an Arctic blast. Everybody's going to get some this week. It's supposed to be horrible for the rest of the week.
Oh, okay. President's Day, right? Here we go. What do you? I think we would expect better on President's Day, but certainly the NBA All-Star Game was fabulous. The boys were jumping up and down on the floor, pulling for their team, although they were pulling for the other team, and I just sat here and just kind of kept calm, like I wasn't pulling for anybody. But it was a great game, a great celebration, and I think 75 years. Let's see if the NBA can stay out of the news like the NFL. Anyway, I'll leave that there. We'll come back to that another time. But hoping you're well, we're going to get right to it. So let's get started. I know it's a holiday, but good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Time to get up, time to get moving. You have to go to work. If you don't, just get this good news and this important conversation. Then you can go back to sleep and get up, put your feet on the floor, feel the coolness come back through the bottom of your feet. Take a deep breath of life, L-I-F-E. You're alive. Time to get up and get out. Make a difference in the world. Get that morning beverage going, whatever it is. Morning Joe. Get that orange juice, and don't forget, drink plenty of water. Got to stay hydrated so you can stay healthy and well. Well, let's talk about it. A couple of things. Super Bowl was over a week ago. We've got the All-Star game, which says the NBA season will be ending. Spring training, you got a lockout. But anyway, these cycles of what we look forward to in terms of sports remind us sometimes about how life goes, right? You put forth the effort in the season, you get a little time to recover, then you got to get focused again to come back and get ready for the next season. In a few weeks from now, the season's going to change. It's another sign. We'll see the blossoms of spring, the return of newness. But we've had to go through the winter time. We've endured the pandemic. All of these signs, seasons are really indicative of life. And I don't know what season you might be in, but I think there are two ingredients that you bring to the moment to help you prepare for the season that you're in. I want to suggest to you that no matter where you are, what's going on, maybe career-wise, family-wise, maybe personally, whatever stage of life you may find yourself in, there are two ingredients. I'm going to give you a two-ingredient recipe for a thing called good life that you can take with you today. And one is optimism, and the other is confidence. Two ingredients that you should take with you wherever you go whatever season you're in, optimism, expecting a good outcome, and confidence, making sure you put forth good effort. The way we approach life, not just in terms of what life might bring us, but also how we approach it, is really going to have a lot to do with the level of success we might enjoy and the way we overcome difficulties. Life doesn't give us guarantees, except you're going to have some days that are going to be troublesome. But how do you overcome the trouble and still embrace the good times? Is you have to remain optimistic. Doesn't matter what happened on yesterday. Doesn't matter what you might face today. If you expect good, I promise you, you will continue to get good. Will that make you exempt from the difficulties? Absolutely not. But I promise you, attitude has a lot to do with how we embrace and enjoy life. But the second thing is confidence, that the effort you put forth, the preparation you put in, the commitment that you bring helps you to make sure that you create the kind of environment that allows you to embrace the good things that you want from life. You can not only make your life better, but the lives around you better. Those two ingredients. Now, this isn't like, don't do this in the kitchen. Now, there's no 2-ingredient pound cake. If somebody tells you that I gave you a 2-ingredient pound cake recipe, don't you eat it. But I promise you, if you want the sweet thing in life, optimism and confidence will help get you there. Make sure you pack both of them this morning as you get out to go about your day, whether you're going to work, going to school, or just if you got the holiday off, just spending some time investing in you. Make sure you expect good things, but you make sure that you bring your best effort to the opportunity. And I promise you, you'll experience the goodness that life has to offer, even as you're getting ready for the next season in your life. That's it. That's all. I want you to have a great day. I'm rooting for you. There's greatness in you. Now go share that greatness with the world. I'll talk to you next week.
Oh, love you, Pastor Todd Urey. That's right. That's the good news. Change your outlook. You'll change everything else in your life. Everybody, let's get to Dr. Shanita Knighton as we talk about the pandemic. Now, we are talking about many other topics as well. Uh, but this is uppermost because I saw this story. And Devin, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Coachella and Stagecoach, which are two of the biggest music festivals in the business, and certainly in the United States, they're dropping all COVID-related restrictions, all of them. Vaccines, COVID-19 testing, masks, doesn't matter. Now, they're outdoor festivals, but there will be no requirements at all, and that's happening. And now, mind you, we're watching California move to an endemic approach to this. That is to say, they say, hey, COVID-19, it's out here. So we have to learn to live with it. It's here. It's here. It's just the pandemic is endemic. It's here. We've got to figure out how to live with it. Boom. So a lot of these restrictions are being relaxed. Now, they're being relaxed differently in different places. In different places, the vaccinated don't have to wear masks. I just want to know how much sense that makes, Dr. Knighton, because, everybody can contract, the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. The people who've gotten the shots and who haven't gotten the shots can still get COVID-19 and they can still spread COVID-19. So I'm trying to figure out what is the deal and what's the best way to approach this brand new world. I mean, indeed, the Prime Minister of Great Britain said, we are in a different world, but he is defending the end of COVID rules in all of England. Ironically enough, as the Queen of England has, been diagnosed positive. So talk to me. What are we looking at?
Good morning.
Good
So
morning.
for one, I would say we probably should have took this approach, being realistic, right? And I'm specifically talking about masks. I'm talking about everything, meaning if they had gone ahead and provided people with education around these topics, said, hey, if you get the vaccines, if you wash your hands, if you do X, Y, and Z, this will lower your risk of hospitalizations and death, okay? That being, for people that decided, I do not want to be vaccinated, that then puts the responsibility on them, that they've made that decision, and that, yes, if I decide not to do it, I'm not going to be in trouble for it. However, it does mean that maybe there's some sort of restrictions, which we saw that was placed on the healthcare system, right? So people were told that they couldn't get certain services. You had doctors that were saying, if you're not vaccinated, then I won't give you care. I'm not telling you any of that is ethical whatsoever, but I think that a lot of that is going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So we're actually going to continue to see a situation of where people are going to start making their own rules and their own expectations around COVID based off of what their beliefs are. Excuse me, it's early.
No, it's okay.
I'm trying to get the rasp out.
No worries. And, we've been joined by Dr. Verholden as well. And so we welcome her, of course, to this show. But, and I think that's why she brought you here, because she said there are crucial elements of education as we are wending our way through this pandemic that we do not have, that an infection preventionist can give us. And many of us we do not have, and we still don't have information. And everybody's making up their own rules, Dr. Knighton.
And that's the concern, because now we're in a situation. Yeah, and I lost my voice, guys, because All-Star Weekend was here, and I partook in a lot of activities, which were great. And I can
Team
tell
LeBron,
you,
I got it.
Yeah, and there were restrictions, meaning you had to come in and present a negative test or a vaccination card, and you got this wristband for the whole weekend for anything that you partook in. But I also think, too, so there were, the mask mandates or guidelines, they were a little bit relaxed, which was to be expected. But people kind of got a chance to just decide what they wanted to do. So you still had some people masked and some people unmasked. As we move forward, my concern is not even so far much the summer again, as we're starting to approach warmer months. It's us going back into the winter. It's us going back into the fall and realizing that we may not be prepared because everybody's going to forget about it. It's also us not thinking about the psychological component and the issues that may cause, meaning people were getting into physical altercations behind people wearing or not wearing masks. And so if now you can imagine the psychology of people being in masks for 2 years now and wanting to drop that, and what that is going to do to anxiety levels, what that's going to do to people not being able to return to what's called this of normal. It's a lot, and I don't think that we have leadership that is addressing that right now. How do we ease our way back out of these things? How do we tell people how to live? How do we continue to ramp up environmental cleaning? Because to me, that's one of the things that we are continuing to ignore. Meaning, if you have thousands and thousands of people touching the same buttons, touching the same items, we're still not having restaurants require hand sanitizers at the tables or some sort of hand cleaning mechanism, but we're still offering the same condiments to sit there, right, to save money. So you look at all of these things and you say to yourself, we're right back to square one without having any restrictions or any requirements on businesses to be able to keep customers safe. So I'm looking at a multimodal issue here. And I'm saying multimodal meaning because it's multiple modes of transmission. It's going to be multiple issues in terms of how people can get sick. But I don't think that the onus is being put on the right, the structure is not okay. Mm-hmm. Meaning if businesses, and I'm sure Dr. Deb will be able to speak to this a little bit, but if there was, let's say, requirements on businesses regarding cleaning, regarding how, they take care of people, that would help. Fitness facilities, we're going to see that roll back. What's going to happen in terms of us watching the numbers go up again? You know, what are we going to do then in regards to how we're going to manage the healthcare setting? Because healthcare workers are still going to be required to be vaccinated. So how does that make them feel morally that you're taking care of someone that still may not have restrictions out in public, but these restrictions still exist in healthcare?
Well, let me ask you this.
I think
Because I'd like to ask you and Dr. Verholden this. Do you think the vaccine mandates will hold, just given, I'm watching Canada very, very closely because according to some reports, more than half of the donations, slightly more than half, came from Americans. And I'm just wondering where we're going with this. There's an epidemiologist. I believe her name is Jennifer Nuzzo. Maybe you know her from Johns Hopkins, from your school, Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. And she said, Dr. Verholden, I think it's probably reasonable not to get too cocky at this point. I welcome the decline in cases that we're seeing in the U.S., to your point, Dr. Knighton, and a number of other countries. And I think you can both celebrate the sunshine while keeping an umbrella close by for the possibility that the rain could occur. I mean, we're not to get too cocky, but I mean, these music festivals have no requirements now. Coachella. No requirements, none. Just come, buy that ticket, and get here. Wow. Stagecoach festivals. I mean, tens of thousands of people will be at these festivals every single day. Every single day, Dr. Deb.
Yeah, that's all of the restrictions we saw are getting peeled back. We don't have a vaccine mandate. We won't likely have a vaccine mandate. We saw what happened when President Biden tried to put that in for employers of 100 or more, and it got repealed by the Supreme Court. So as a country, we've decided it's up to individuals and it's up to people and it's up to individual companies to do what they choose to do with respect to what they require of their employees. I happen to be at an institution where there's a vaccine mandate, but I can tell you there are a lot of people getting around that with these exemptions. So. My recommendation to people is to take the advice we've been giving them. Take the reins of your own health. Do everything that you can to get your own health up, not just for COVID, but for life. So that no matter what you face or what you encounter, you have what you need. Myself and others are continuing to fight for equity in this because, unfortunately, we know the impact of COVID has been very disproportionate on Black and brown communities. It's hit some really rural communities hard. It hit the Native American community really, really hard. Mm-hmm. We don't really even talk about that
at all.
So we're trying to figure out what does that mean and how do we ensure fair and equal protection for everybody. And so at this point, it really is in the hands of individuals. It will really be what you do for yourself and your family that's going to make the difference. And if you don't feel comfortable being at a large event, indoors or outdoors, that's unmasked, I would encourage people not to go to those events. And the reality of it is this is where we're headed. And I do have a concern about us just seeding the next surge instead of actually being able to, sort of enjoy the benefit of this one dying down. But if you go back and you look, if you just Google like COVID, daily COVID cases, it'll pull up. One of the first things that'll pop up is this epidemic curve map that'll show you the average daily cases since the beginning of the pandemic. And you can sort of see the peaks and the valleys. And what's predictable is as it gets warmer and the summer approaches, we're going to see a valley. The numbers will go down. And then it'll be followed potentially by a peak because it'll become kind of like COVID season, if you will. And it's really unfortunate because I'm a prayerful woman, but I tend to leave my prayers and my religion out of my science because, if my leg was broke, I wouldn't pray for my leg to be healed. I would go to the doctor or go to the urgent care, the ED, and let them fix my broken leg. So we got real tools to help fix some of what we're dealing with, but we're just not using them.
Well,
literally, as a scientist, all I got now is prayer. I just pray that things stay good.
Well, you know what? And I pray that we have people whom we can trust because we're living in a very, 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 very interesting age in which, increasingly, people mistrust our authorities. And more, more and more is being exposed. And I think that's part of the problem that we have here. That even when it comes down to our health, we're not trusting the people who are supposed to be in charge of keeping us healthy. I'm going to get a few more minutes with doctors Deborah Verholden and Shanita Knighton on the other side of the break. We're asking you about war today, war and peace. War and peace. Are you willing to go to war over Ukraine? Are you willing to send someone you love to war over Ukraine? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Dr. Deb?
Yep.
How you doing, hon?
I'm good. I'm in Virginia.
Oh, Lord have mercy. When you going to get home?
I don't know.
Give you all that today. I was like, wait a minute, what?
I don't know. That's funny. She said, when you gonna get home?
Isn't that terrible? I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to guilt you.
I don't know.
Look, you know what is so funny? I remember because my father was on the road 80, 90% of the time. And there was this big snowstorm. I mean, just really, the winter of 79 was just nuts. Late 78, early 79, it was crazy. And my father got stuck in New York because, of course, he had to go out and make a living. And he took the train home. Literally, it took them all night long because the snow was just so bad. And I remember it because he had just buried Donny Hathaway. It took them almost 2 weeks to get his body from New York to Chicago to East St. Louis. Because we lost a mayor over. We put a mayor out of office. Of course, I couldn't vote then because this mayor handled this couple of feet of snow that we got so badly. But my father said, I said, Daddy, you could have been in a hotel. Why did you take the train all night long? He said, I am on the road all the time. You don't know what a privilege it is for me to get up, to go over, because my father would go around to all of our rooms and say goodnight. He said, I did not grow up like
60
this.
60 seconds, everyone.
I never spent one night under the same roof as my mother and father. So to see you all under the same roof, he said, that is a victory for me. It's warm. Everybody's well fed. Everybody's doing great. He said, you know what a blessing that is? He said, plus I want to go to bed in my bed and wake up in it. So I'm wishing you well, Dr. Deb, because I'm waiting to hear India cooing in the background, and I'm not hearing that.
No.
I know. We love that baby, your twin. Stand by. We're going to go for another 10 minutes or so. We got to get into this war. Do you all want to give any comments on that? If you do, of course, Dr. Knighton can always call back.
10 seconds, everyone.
I love how she does that.
She'll call back. Excuse me. Really? Oh, okay.
I be having.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Fauci last week said that we are moving out of, the first phase of this pandemic. Really just everything is changing. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, even as the Queen, is now COVID positive, but she's doing quite well according to press reports. He said we're in a different world, but we are in an endemic phase. Governor Newsom, California, our most populous state in the United States, he said it's endemic and we have got to move on. Now, one of your colleagues from Johns Hopkins, Jennifer Nuzzo, said, let's not get too cocky, everybody. Don't get too cocky. In the meantime, Coachella, Dr. Verholden, and Stagecoach, two of our biggest festivals, and I expect more to come, all COVID-related restrictions have been dropped. And now it's really uneven, Dr. Verholden, because from state to state, it just depends upon what state you're in that, the restrictions that still apply. Should the
should there be federally mandated guidelines on this? Even though I know we don't, I think we don't do well with mandates because I think that's something in the American DNA. But I also think that there is a lot of mistrust about our treatment. So there, I mean, I think you have a lot of issues colliding. But when you see two of the biggest festivals thus far, no, I was shocked. I said no restrictions. I mean, like none. No vaccine, no testing, no masks, nothing. You can just come.
Yeah, we're going to see more and more of that. That's the times now. It's been too long, right? It's been two years. We've seen all the ups and downs, and I'm not making excuses for people, but I do understand the experience. People have said, I did my part. I got your vaccine. I got your booster. I took my kids and got your vaccine and your booster. People are literally now externalizing themselves from the vaccine. I can't tell you how many people call it my vaccine. I got your vaccine, Dr. Verhoeven. I'm like, my vaccine? Our vaccine. I went on ahead and got your vaccine. I'm like, whoa, like they did me a favor. I think people really feel like they've done their part. They've done what's been asked of them. They didn't get the information that they needed to, I think, make a good informed decision. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of misunderstanding, and I don't blame people for that. People thinking if I get the vaccine, I won't get COVID. I mean, now we all are clear that that's not the case, but I don't think we did a very good job, and I'm saying I'm going to own it, like the scientific community, the public health community. I don't think we did a good job at making that really clear for people. It was oversold, and now it's underdelivered. And I even saw something where a guy said, and he's sort of one of these leading health experts, said the vaccine is still very effective at preventing infection. It's 90% effective at preventing Omicron infection. And I'm like,
where did he come up with that?
I don't know. I just was like, where did you get that from? That I don't believe that for a second, because I know so many vaccinated people who've contracted COVID. Mind you, none of those people, none of them, and I do know that people even who are vaccinated can get severe COVID, but none of the people that I know who were vaccinated got severe COVID. By contrast, all the people that I know who did get severe COVID or died were unvaccinated. So I'm like, it's still very confusing.
It is confusing because in Israel, we're seeing something different. They are with the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, that's what they're using just about exclusively. And these people are in the hospital and on and on and on. And it was sold as a treatment that was a vaccine, as we have understood vaccines. But of course, in the midst of the pandemic, the definition of vaccine changed. And so that all of that becomes problematic. And so I'm just asking you now, one of your colleagues from Johns Hopkins said, let's not get too cocky. I mean, before we pivot into talking about war and peace, what should our spring and summer, because it's about to get warm, it's hard to believe, but we're like 6-7 weeks away from spring. What should that look like for us, Dr. Verhoeven? I mean, what should we be doing? Should we be masking while we're outside? I mean, how do you eat outside? If you're going to go out and have dinner or lunch, I mean, what are we supposed, how are we supposed to live going forward now that this is endemic, as you said it was going to be? Dr. Verhoeven?
Sorry, I lost you for just a second. I like the point that Dr. Knighton was pointing to, which is we have had an opportunity to figure out how to do some things better. And if we would do those basic things, it would help us not just in COVID, but in all kinds of infection prevention, right? So we now know, I'm literally like, why do we need these paper or plastic menus anymore? They're just like little germ carriers. It's so much better. Bop your phone bop a barcode on the table with your phone, and then you don't have to touch or spread germs through these menus, which have been vectors for spreading infection. I told you about the lady in the restaurant. I watched her lick the ketchup bottle like she was at home. She dumped the ketchup on her plate, and then she licked the rim of the ketchup bottle. And I was like, oh, my gosh. It's like, why do we even have that? Why do we have salt shakers and pepper shakers anymore? When we know, right, they took all that stuff away when we had COVID, because we now know those things just increase the spread of infection. So we've learned all these things, but, you know, for a little bit of cost savings, people are going to go back to those same ways of doing things, you know, and I just feel like it's a missed opportunity. If we could be regulating anything, it should be some of these things that, again, would help us not just with COVID, but with all kinds of infections. So, you know, people in this urgency to get back to air quote normal, like, I don't know if our normal was necessarily a thing
so
for
healthy.
us to rush back to.
Right?
Yeah, we've learned some things. Let's integrate those things, you know, that we've learned. And I have been very disappointed, I won't lie, in the fact that throughout this whole pandemic, we never once got a national mask mandate. I've still witnessed major inequities in all these COVID resources. I feel like Black and brown people, especially when that first wave, for example, of PPP dollars came out, we got overlooked. Second wave, a lot of people got that. Now all the buzz is all of the checking up on people that they're going to do and the hunting people down who weren't good stewards or weren't honest in their PPP money. So I just feel like instead of this pandemic being something that we actually use to propel ourselves forward and improve on public health, it's just going to be something that maybe becomes a new tool for furthering inequity, and we've just missed the mark and missed the opportunity to now do better out of what we learned from the pandemic. So yeah, don't be surprised. I think everything is going away. I think everything. And I don't think we'll see one layer peeled back and another one ramped up. Nope, the mask requirements will go away, but no vaccine mandates will come in their place. Restaurants will reopen. There will be no, you know, changes in how restaurants generally do business. Because the reality of it is most of the things that we see that people do reliably and consistently is because there's laws and policies behind them. And then those policies have some kind of enforcement. And I say laws without enforcement are akin to gums without teeth. So we as a people really only do what we're required to do, right? When I broke curfew and nothing happened, I kept breaking curfew. And the first time I got home, and my mom was sitting there in the dark like a crazy person, waiting for me. And then the next day put bars on the window, and I got punished for 3 months. When I got my privileges back, you better believe I was in that house on time from then on out.
Well, you know what? I think that, like I said, I think we have to look at this globally. People have to be honest about. I think the restrictions. You got to be very, very careful. It's easy to give up a right. It's very hard to get it back. And people need to. So I'm always on the side of, wait a minute. Don't take my right away from me now, because I know I'm going to have to march and fight and claw and whatnot to get it back. That having been said, I need to be able to trust you. When you are standing next to the president and you are the person I'm looking at, yes, Dr. Fauci, you need to be wearing a mask. I don't care how much the president might glare at you. You need to be wearing a mask. And you need to tell me I need to wear a mask, period. That's it. Chappelle put it this way before we pivot. She said they have decided the pandemic is over. They want the economy to flourish, so they don't care about the nearly 1 million deaths. And as what is it? I mean, and that's the end of that. That's the end of that. But we're the ones who have to care. And so I'm so glad that we have you and Dr. Knighton with us every day to help us to go through how we're going to be able to wend our way through this pandemic that is now endemic. We got to live with COVID-19. And Bill Gates, the seer and knower of all things, says that we've got some worse viruses coming down the pike. I didn't know he went to school with you. I'm just kidding.
We do. I hate to say it, Santita. Like, the thing is like, we know that the combination of, like, let's say global, you know, the global changes, you know, with global warming, temperatures being an issue. We know also, too, I hate to say it, I keep telling people all of the meat that's on their plate is vaccinated because the animals are sick as a result of what's happening with the climate. You have that as a factor. You still have, like, processed food as being a factor. Many people don't understand that when these natural disasters happen and they leave standing water in certain places, what kind of germs, you know, end up in that water. And so when we have exhausted the use of antibiotics, right? To where we have all of these multi-drug resistant organisms, it makes it very hard for us to have protective things to be able to fight them off. Hence, we still don't have, let's say, a cure for the flu.
Sure.
We don't have a cure for a lot of respiratory infectious diseases, including TB, right? So when you look up and you say to yourself, okay, can we vaccinate our way or can we medicate our way out of this? The question comes is, what do we need to do to start living different and to start living better?
Sure.
And I think that those are the questions that we really need to start thinking about. And in the meantime, until we have those answers, we need to be promoting better ways for people to take care of their bodies and take care of their health, because these bugs are coming. They're here even before COVID, as I mentioned.
Sure.
I've been studying ways for us to decrease the spread of them. And unfortunately, when this one got here, nobody knew how bad it was.
Sure.
We didn't know about the situation. So we have a long way to go.
We absolutely do. Let me get in a quick question before I bring on Attorney Patillo and Mr. Bryce Green. Let me bring on Mark, who has a question for you, Dr. Verholden. Mark, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
And, thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I have a quick question for Dr. Verholden and Dr. Knighton. Is there a way for people to just get an assessment of like immune system health? I mean, the obvious is, of course, you don't get sick, you don't get colds. But is there an actual medical test or series of tests that can give people a reliable
That's a great
sense
question.
of what their immune health is?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Dr.
So
Verholden,
they
no,
do
Mark, Dr. Verholden, Dr. Knighton, is there a test?
So there is. So typically, no, go ahead, Dr. Dead.
Well, for COVID specifically, and I'm actually a part of a large NIH initiative called SeroNet, and we do what's called serology testing. And basically, we built a test, and it's a colleague at Yale by the name of Chris Haney who's on our project. And it's almost like little Lego building blocks where he's identified the different types of antibodies that one gets from immunity through infection and recovery, and also through vaccination. And he can identify and isolate which types of antibodies you have and the level of them. And changes over time, right? We've all heard about waning immunity. Well, we now can sort of measure that with these serology tests. As far as your overall immune system, I don't have the answer to that. That might be a better Dr. Knighton question.
Dr. Knighton?
But as it relates specifically to COVID, yes, we do have technology available for people to be able to understand what, sort of underlying immunity or immune response or antibodies, in particular types of antibodies, they may have in response to either being vaccinated or being infected.
And that's a serology test? Did you ask your doctor very quickly for that?
You can.
Okay.
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
We have the kind of the best test, right? Because we have these are homegrown. Like, we developed this method and we're actually using it in Genesee County. But you can go get an antibody test. The problem is your typical antibody test that you'll get, it's only going to tell you whether or not you have COVID antibodies.
Okay,
right?
but I think he's speaking just generally speaking about your immune system, because that's something that you and Dr. Knighton have spoken about extensively, that our immune systems need to become much more robust. But I think that finding out about COVID is important. But very quickly, Dr. Knighton, is there any test that we can take aside from the one from COVID, which I want to know about too?
Right. But typically what happens is you'll go and you will get, like, let's say what's called a CBC, okay? And it'll be able to tell you whether or not, let's say, your white blood cell count are elevated or not. That typically tells you, like, if you're, let's say, on the verge of having an infection per se. So you have that, but typically when that's given, you're already on the brink of it. I also want to tell people that the immune system is almost like on the spectrum, right? So how I always mention on the show that, like, if you eat 75 milligrams of sugar. It lowers your immune system for 5 hours. So that could be a can of pop and a pastry. And so the test that you might get, like right now at this very second, isn't going to be indicative of your immune health, let's say hours or days from now. So it's always a moving target. And that's why it's this constant thing about, hey, make sure that you're eating, fresh fruits and fresh vegetables, right? So if you were to eat fresh fruits and fresh vegetables today, but then you say, oh, I'm going to take a break from all of them for a week, it's not to say that you're going to have a lower immune response, but the things that would impact your immune system, they differ. The weather impacts your immune system, right? Like the changes of it. So there's so many different things that it's a moving target that all of these tools are typically told to people to do, so that way it's staying at an optimal place all the time. So I hope that helps to answer your question.
That helps a lot. I mean, there's so many things impact us, but that's why you're here, because we want to know. Look, how healthy can we be? How healthy can we be? And buenos dias, to health is you. Hey, girl, give me your full name, my dear sister. Sending you much love today, everybody. Dr. Shanina Knight, an infection preventionist, research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. A little hoarse today because she has been screaming because the All-Star game is in Cleveland, which is where she is. Shame on you. And now you could speak to me about the voice. I could have shown you how to scream so you wouldn't get hoarse. Okay? I'll help you with that. I know, poor child. Team LeBron won. I'm happy about that. Oh, my father was there living his best life. And of course, Dr. Deborah Verholden, but Dr. Deb and Dr. Knighton, he was wearing his mask. Hello. I'm proud of him. That's right. He was not going to be able to get back in that house. How about that? So I've got Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting and attorney Robert Patillo coming off of his tour, trying to get everybody to Selma, Alabama. Everybody, Dr. Knighton and Dr. Verholden, I'm going to invite you all. We should go down to Selma in a couple of weeks. It's a pilgrimage that I think everybody should go on. Whatever your background, as Americans, it's something that we need to see. You need to see this little town called Selma, Alabama, that changed the world. It's a wonderful pilgrimage that we make every year to commemorate the Selma to Montgomery March, to cross that Edmund Pettus Bridge, to see how small it is, and to see a town that is virtually unchanged. It's like the town that time forgot. But you'll have a wonderful time. If you want to get on the bus, call Rainbow Push at 773-FREEDOM. 773-FREEDOM. Get registered and get on down to Selma. I am going to head down there myself. But we are talking about this impending war. Now, Presidents Biden and Putin have agreed in principle to meet over Ukraine. Now, will they do it by telephone? Will they do it in person? President Biden has said for his portion, Russia can't have invaded the Ukraine first. Okay. And President Putin has his issues as well, but they're saying we don't want war. What are you talking about? So, Bryce, when you hear that President Macron of France has engineered, at least initially, this, in principle, this Ukraine summit, what do you think? I mean, for the invasion they say it's coming, Bryce. It's supposed to be coming. I'm not laughing at it, but this is the craziest thing, because they've sent all these reporters over there, and they're wearing all their little military gear. It's crazy. They're coming.
You can only laugh because about a month ago they said that an invasion was imminent, and then a few weeks ago they said now we have a date for the invasion. It's February the 16th. Get ready, American personnel, please evacuate Ukraine. And then the 16th came and went, and then they said, oh, actually, the invasion day is on the 20th. Well, that was yesterday. It came and went. But now Biden's up there saying, I'm absolutely convinced that Vladimir Putin is about to invade. At some point, you just got to ask, do they think that we're stupid, or are they stupid? There is no reason to believe that Putin will invade. French and German
it'll be a false flag.
Stop it.
It's going to be a false flag. Stop.
Yeah, they said there's going to be some sort of false flag video that the Russians are going to spread and then justify their invasion. But German and French foreign ministries, they've repeatedly said, the U.S. hasn't shared any intelligence with us. We have seen no such thing. We've asked them, but they refuse to share it. It's just the United States and the United Kingdom who have been saying that we have special intelligence we can't share with anybody, not the public, not our counterparts in other NATO allies. This information we're keeping to ourselves, but we're 100% certain that Vladimir Putin is going to invade. I mean, you have to laugh. You have to laugh. And for that to be true, you would have to believe that Vladimir Putin is one of the stupidest people on planet Earth. Like, if he wanted to invade Ukraine, why on earth would he wait 3 months while the United States and other NATO countries poured billions of dollars of weapons into Ukraine? Why would they allow Ukraine months to prepare for an invasion? Every second they delay, they are increasing the cost to themselves. So I think it's very dubious, a dubious prospect at least, to say that Vladimir Putin is going to invade. But, I mean, if Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden are meeting on this, that is progress. That is progress, because for a long time, the United States has really been stonewalling Vladimir Putin's plan for escalation. Ever since the troop buildup happened in late last year, December, Putin has been pretty clear about a way to de-escalate. He's been pretty clear about what he wants to get out of the situation. Putin wants an agreement that would either prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, a hostile military alliance at Russia's border, and that would prevent military bases from being placed so close to its border, that would prevent U.S. troops, that would prevent missiles pointed at him. Putin doesn't want that, but we do. That's what we've been trying to do. And the fact that that's been reported in the West as non-starters just shows you where the American public's head at, where the American leaders' heads are at. Like, they don't want to even consider very reasonable negotiations until they're escalating the situation. And they're saying Putin wants to go to war. While, like I said, Germans don't believe that Putin's going to war. The French don't believe Putin's going to war. Even President Zelensky in Ukraine has said that he doesn't believe Putin's going to war. In fact, President Zelensky has been calling Biden, saying, why are you spreading so much panic? Please don't do this. This is dangerous for everybody involved. You're escalating the situation. Please stop. Of course, this barely gets reported in the U.S. All you hear in the U.S. media is just repetition of whatever the U.S. intelligence agencies are predicting. And we all know the U.S. intelligence community has a long history of lying, just flat out lying. I mean, remember in 1991, during the first Iraq War, the stories about Kuwaiti babies being taken out of their incubators and thrown on the ground by Saddam's troops.
Told by the ambassador's daughter?
Yeah, it was picked up by the New York Times, by Amnesty International, by everyone. And then it turned out that this story came from the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, and it was completely false. And everyone just had to, step back from it. No one was, held to account for that. No one was like, how did the media get this so wrong? No one asked that. They just moved on. They said, nothing to see here. Oops. And then it happened again, in 2003, the WMD scare in Iraq. The intelligence community was like, we are certain. There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and is about to use them. That turned out to be complete BS too. But again, no one was held to account. The corporate media was able to just go along. They just repeated intelligence community propaganda. And when it turned out to be false, no one was held to account. And they did it again, in Libya. There were stories about some things that Gaddafi soldiers were doing that turned out to be completely false. You see this in Syria. You see this all over the world, where the United States wants to intervene, wants to have a greater hand in events on the ground. But each time you see corporate media lap these pronouncements up, accept them uncritically, and then present them to the American public like it's absolute fact. And so now they're saying Putin's about to invade. They refuse to provide evidence to the public. They refuse to provide evidence to their allies. And at some point, the American people simply have to say no more. We are not listening to these people. These people are untrustworthy. And the corporate media that amplifies their voices should be held to account. They should be ignored, and they should be challenged. But that's not what we have here. We have a very compliant media. We have a very complacent media, and we have a very, they're completely unaccountable.
Well, they're accountable to someone, just not us. And that's what they're supposed to be. They are the only protected professional class in our Constitution. And so they have an obligation. They have a public obligation. They're a public utility, Robert Patillo. And so when we get on the other side of the break, I want you to speak to all of that. And what, there's a brilliant piece that has gone viral, thank heavens, that Bryce Green has written about what the corporate media have missed about Ukraine. And who wants war? What's going on here? And are you willing to go fight it? That's what I want to know. Are you willing to send your loved ones to fight this? Oh, yes, the president has said that, troops are off the table. Troops are never off the table when you have war. Ever. Ever. So what are we doing here? I mean, don't you want that money to go to some schools here? Really? To building some hospitals? To getting some money in your pockets? This is why you can't get enough money to build these roads. I remember the bridge that fell in Pittsburgh. Oh, my gosh. When the president was getting there to talk about infrastructure. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Well, now there you go. Robert, meet Bryce.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good to meet you.
I know. Oh, you all going to have a good time because you all are both crazy. Just nuts. Love it.
Well, Santita, whenever I can use my political science degree with a concentration on international relations, where all they taught us was about the Soviet Union, I get to use it for once. So I do appreciate Ukraine being in the news.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, what is
I can't even imagine going to a political science program during the Cold War. That seems insane.
And he was at a black school.
Yeah,
That's scary.
Yeah, all that information became completely irrelevant as soon as the Cold War was over.
You mean you didn't need to learn Russian?
No, I could have just majored in learning how to do video game programming or TikTok videos or something.
You know what, you guys, and of course, we're on Facebook Live right now. Everybody, this is really not funny. This is really life and death. And I think that's one of the things I pivot to this because I think that many of us don't know enough about Ukraine. All jokes aside, we don't know where it is. We don't know of its geopolitical significance. We don't know that there's gold, if you will, oil up in them hills. I mean, we don't even understand Russia's significance on the world stage. You don't even understand that Cuba is about to join OPEC. In 2008, it was found that they are one of the 20 greatest oil-producing countries in the world. They have all that oil off the coast of Cuba, and in fact, I think it was it the Soviet Union? Well, not the Soviet Union. That Russia forgave 90% of their debt so they could have access to that oil. See, we need to understand what's going on here. And after that, because I was on another station which I love so much. I said, now, you know what? Now they're about to open up the doors of Cuba, and they did. How about that? Because it is about the money. Oh, but you all are so much fun. And I have to tell you, Robert, and you know this, because Robert is the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, Bryce. And Reverend was supposed to speak yesterday. He delayed his speech for an hour. He wanted to hear more of what Bryce had to say and more of what Dr. David Gibbs had to say. He said, who is he? Who is that boy? My father's 80, so don't take it personally. It was not a pejorative. Okay. He could tell.
No, I'm young. I get it.
He was like, who is he? Huh. I mean, and because for the life of him, he's like, he should be on television. I said, they're not gonna put him on TV. Daddy. What? They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. But you're on this platform, and we have to put you on many others because the more people hear you, and I want you all to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763. Hey, Rick from Clearwater, I want you all, please like and share. Everybody go to my YouTube channel, The Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe there. Like and subscribe. And let us have this conversation today about war and peace. Are you willing to go to Ukraine to fight? Are you willing to send your loved ones there to fight? I mean, if it comes to that. And what about China? China is on the other side of Russia. You do know that? I mean, do you really think they would have some big European conflict and China not be involved? This is not 70 years ago, people. Huh. I mean, Bryce, Robert. I mean, it's like, what is the advantage here? Are you all still there?
Yeah, there isn't an advantage. This is why this entire conversation from the beginning has been skewed in the national media, and very much has just simply been a way for the administration to change the subject from everything else they screwed up.
Unbelievable.
Right. Well, I do think there's a short-term advantage to some people, right? It was reported recently that Eric Prince and the Blackwater, well, they're not called Blackwater anymore. They changed their name, but they're involved in Ukraine, helping to train paramilitaries. So they're getting fat contracts from somebody. And there was a report recently about how much money the defense contractors are making. Their stock price is rising because, tensions make
60 seconds, everyone.
Tensions make the weapons companies happy. And those are who's winning. That's why the U.S. just passed, $600 million in weapons that they can send to Ukraine. Like, there are people who are winning, but long term, you're exactly right. Like, this is strategic. This is strategic malpractice. Like, if NATO's goal was to stop Russia and stop China from being as strong as they are, what they're doing is pushing them closer together and pushing the other countries into their orbit.
Absolutely.
Like anyone could see that. Anyone with like half a brain and any knowledge of
it's called hubris. Excessive pride.
It is hubris. They're being blinded to the obvious.
Because they call a world war a European war. Hello, it was a European war. I'm not mad at you, but it's not a world war. You missed 5 other continents.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world.
Yes.
We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, February 21st, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We used to be Air America, but today we're WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk, the home of progressive talk radio in the United States of America. I am also on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending everybody much, 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 much love. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about the threatening talk between the United States, NATO, and Russia. Are you willing to go to war over Ukraine? I'm asking you because we all have skin in the game. Are you willing to send your loved one over there? Do you know why we're so upset? Do you know the real history of Ukraine, of Russia, and why Russia does? Do you know that we broke an agreement with Russia? We said, okay, in exchange for you not pushing back against the collapse of the reunification of Germany, NATO's not going to move eastward. We're not going to move toward you. Okay. They upheld their end of the bargain. We did not. So I want to talk with you about that, because all that stuff really does matter. And this is about being fair, everybody. This is about being fair and about being trusted. America is feared, but it's not trusted. And that is something that should concern all of us. I'm Santita Jackson. I want you to call me at 773 or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's my official page, everybody. Please join me over there. And meet me on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines so we can get right into the show. Chicago will have a high of 44 degrees, scattered showers today. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 21 degrees above zero, a winter storm warning. Please be careful, everybody, and snow showers. The NBA All-Star Game, everybody, Team LeBron versus Team Durant. Who you got? Well, Team LeBron eked it out, 163-160 over Team Durant. And Steph Curry, this shooting machine, absolutely was the MVP. Congratulations. It was a great time had by all. Today is President's Day. God bless you, everybody. It's a federal holiday honoring all
46 American presidents. The day is also known as George Washington's birthday, after the nation's first president, although his actual birthday is February 22nd. God bless all of our presidents, everybody. AT&T is shutting down its 3G network now. If you have the iPhone 5, if you have a 3G flip phone, if you have a 3G Kindle, all of that, it's not going to work. So that gets shut down tomorrow, everybody. Ahmaud Arbery, can you believe it? It's been a year? Actually, 2 years. 2 years ago, on February 23rd, he was chased down and killed by the McMichaels and Mr. Bryan. The jury found these three white men charged in the killing guilty. And now we have this federal hate crime. What's going to happen with that trial? Of course, we're going to have you back on at Robert Patillo to talk about that, because that's happening in your neck of the woods. And of course, we're going to have to talk about the Kimberly Potter verdict in the next few days, certainly tomorrow and the next day after that. Saturday is the 10th anniversary. Can you believe it's been 10 years since the murder of Trayvon Martin? He was just going out for some Skittles, that baby. He would have been 27 years of age. Never got out of high school. Wow. God bless him and God bless that family. They've gone on to do so many wonderful things, but nothing will ever fill that hole in their hearts. And we're just praying for the Trayvon Martin family and all of these families, Philando Castile and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland. And the numbers just keep on, Emmett Till, they just keep on coming, everybody. Keep on coming, everybody. What about Ukraine? Excuse me, tell me. Call me at 773-763-9278. We've been talking with Bryce Green. Excuse me, Anderson Accuracy and Reporting. We haven't heard from you, Robert Patillo. Talk to us.
Well, it's always interesting to me when the military industrial complex gets to coincide with low poll numbers and gets to go coincide with low ratings for the media. That almost always is a recipe for the rumors of war. And that's what we're seeing right now. There was a movie in 1997 that I remember. It was a terrible movie, but it was called Wag the Dog.
That was a great movie. Stop it.
It was interesting, but what I love about it is the premise that you have a president that has low poll numbers, so he decides to start a war somewhere to distract people from that, because the nation of Americans, we unite around our military, we unite around our troops. It's always about supporting the troops. You saw this with George W. Bush invading countries to support the military-industrial complex and to find a justification for him to have a second term in office. And I think that's very much what we're seeing the framework being laid right now. A few things on the rational actor model of foreign policy. Vladimir Putin has not stayed in power for 20 years by being a crazy person. He doesn't do crazy things. What he does do, however, is understand the strategic interests of America, and also that the Western European nations cannot be trusted. Remember, in 1939, Russia had a non-aggression pact with Hitler. A couple years later, Hitler invaded them. Remember that they had an agreement with Napoleon during the Napoleonic Wars. A couple years later, Napoleon invaded them. So Russia has every reason not to trust the Western European nations, Germany, France, Great Britain, so on and so forth. Historically, they have broken their words and broken their treaties, and by America being in league with them, we have the same level of trust as they have with those groups who have killed hundreds of millions of Russians over the years. So in 1990, NATO made an agreement as part of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, that they would not expand eastward. What's the first thing that they did? They add Germany in, then they add in Poland, and they start gobbling up Eastern Bloc nations over the course of the next 20 years or so, to the point that they are at the doorstep of Moscow now. When you add Sweden and Finland in the north, when you add Moldova, Romania, Turkey in the southwest of Russia, you effectively box them in to the point that now we have NATO troops and missiles within 500 miles of Moscow. To give that some context, imagine if Russia had missiles sitting in Toronto or sitting in Mexico City or sitting in Cuba, put some tanks in the Bahamas.
I feel like America might have some issues with that, being surrounded at the top, bottom, and sides, with the military forces of people who have invaded you many times in the last couple of centuries. Even though Russia appears to be a gigantic country, almost everything in the eastern two-thirds is Siberia. All of Russia's population, all of their industrialization exists within the sphere of influence of where NATO troops currently exist. So what Putin's point is to show, look, I might lose this fight, but y'all going to have to stop all this expanding. Y'all have to understand that we are still prideful people. We may lose, but we want to make sure everybody understands that this is where we're making a stand right here at Ukraine. Because remember that Russia as a nation was founded as the Kievan Rus, the capital of Ukraine being Kiev. So they are these same people. They come from a shared lineage. They come from a shared heritage. They share many of the traditions and rituals, so on and so forth. But a political schism is what caused the Ukraine to become an independent nation after the end of the Cold War. So they still see the Ukrainians as being their ethnic brethren. In many ways, the same way the Americans see the British or see Canadians or see Australians as being from kind of a similar colonial lineage as them. And then also we have to look at the strategic aspect of what's going on with Ukraine, why Putin went into Crimea in the first place. Russia, for the most part, has three ways to get to the sea. You have through the Bering Strait all the way by Alaska on the edge of Russia. The problem with that port is that those are waters that the U.S. Navy patrols, and they can shut off trade there anytime they really feel like, with just a simple blockade giving American military strength. You have the North Sea port. Coming out of St. Petersburg, where they can get to international waters. Couple issues there. That ice is over in the winter because it's in the Arctic Circle. And then also you have the fact that the British Royal Navy patrols those waters, and we've added Sweden and Finland to the Western alliances. So therefore it makes it very difficult for them to get their goods to port from there. What is the literal only other option in the entirety of the Russian body of land that gets them to the water, despite how large it is? Right there through the Black Sea, that Black Sea port that goes past Crimea is the best possible way for them to get their get goods out of the western part of Russia into the global markets, into the Mediterranean, out to the Atlantic Ocean. So what NATO did by bringing in Romania, bringing in Ukraine, bringing in Turkey, is effectively make it where Russia can be shut off from the entirety of the global market with just a handful of warships placed strategically around the country. You could effectively starve Russia out anytime you felt like it. So, of course, there's a strategic reason that Russia wants to ensure that they have access to these ports. So instead of us acting as if Russia is acting irrationally, the Western nations have to abide by the treaties they have already signed 30-plus years ago and simply stop the expansion. But because we have a media which is starved for content, they're still talking about Trump stories from 2 and 3 years ago right now. We have a media that's starved for content. So rumors of war make for great ratings. You have your breaking news banner. You bring in all your former generals to talk about what's going to happen. You fill up the news cycle. At the same time, you have the military-industrial complex, which has to justify the $780 billion per year that we spend on hyper-advanced weaponry that we never use. We developed an F-22 stealth fighter 20-plus years ago. It has never shot down another airplane. It's been a complete waste of money, because, but they need to find something for it to shoot down to justify why they get the next round of billions and billions of dollars. That's new aircraft carriers to build. And then tertiarily, you have an administration that has floundered, that has failed on pretty much all of their domestic agenda. Everything that they have promised, from Build Back Better to the Voting Rights Act to criminal justice reform to student loan reform, they haven't been able to get done. So a war would be the perfect thing going into the midterm elections to distract the American people away from the failures the administration has had. So, and this is one of the most clear examples of wag the dog that I can see on in recent memory. And we have to hold these people accountable. The Ukrainians aren't afraid the Russians are going to invade because they're the same ethnic group. They're the the same people. So if they're not afraid, then there's no reason for America to keep trying to foment this war, just simply because it serves their purposes.
Do you have a response before we go to the callers, Bryce?
Well, no, that was exactly right. I agree with everything that he just said. There's a little bit more context that I would add, is that Putin's current actions can't be understood without taking into account the fact that in 2014, the United States helped to overthrow the government of Ukraine and replace the government with a pro-Western oriented government. And they turned away from Russia. And so that is why that is why Russia feels so threatened by having Ukraine talk about joining NATO. It's because the U.S. overthrew the government and installed a pro-NATO leader. And now that we're talking about adding Ukraine to NATO, now that we're seriously talking about, putting bases, putting weapons, putting missiles, putting soldiers right at Russia's border, well, Russia doesn't like that. And how is Russia going to get the U.S.'s attention without a major show of force like they're doing at the border? Like, no one's saying it's right to threaten your neighbors, but the United States has been bombing, invading, droning, sanctioning countries all around the world. And to say that no other country can do that, I mean, that's the height of hypocrisy. And as long as we continue to be ignorant of those facts, then we're really not going to have any way to clearly see the current situation. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at the role that we have played. Like he said, Putin has been very clear about a path to de-escalation. Ukraine must be neutral. Ukraine must be neutral. There's historical precedent for that. There should be no weapons that close to Moscow. There should be no U.S. bases, no NATO bases that close to Moscow. But the Biden administration refuses to negotiate on these grounds. In essence, they're saying that we have the right to put bases at your border. We have the right to have missiles an hour away from Moscow. We have the right to do that to you. And that's just pure hypocrisy. But the American people don't really see that. What the American people see is the fear-mongering that the Biden administration, the intelligence officials, and the media who repeats them, what they see is that fear being generated. And they see, oh, well, Russia's a bad guy. Didn't he hack our elections? And again, it's all a cumulative public relations exercise on the part of the U.S. government to stupefy the American public into submission, to keep them confused so that they're unable to see the situation clearly, and to manufacture consent for greater intervention in foreign affairs.
773-763-9278. Rick from Clearwater. How you doing, Rick?
Hi, good morning, Ms. Jackson. I am from the Pilsen neighborhood, and I'm a transplant out here in Florida.
Bless your
heart.
heart.
I would like to direct my... Thank you. Thank you. Well, I would like to direct my comment, my opinions, my humble opinion, to my fellow Chicagoans, liberals out there. Think about this. You're hearing all this talk about the geography, Putin, the greed of the media. It's the media. And he's right. The last person who just got done speaking, it's creating doom and gloom, and it makes you feel bad. So here's what I got to say to you, my fellow Chicagoans. We need to start thinking, well, what am I going to do? This is just an overwhelming thing. And here is my opinion on where we need to start. We have to break up these corporations that are behind it all. It's not the media. Corporations own the media. Corporations control the narrative behind the media. They are the systemic cause. They are the root cause of what the media does, not the media as its own entity. So and I say this with all due respect to your guests, they're missing the mark, and it's a disservice. It's not the media. It's the people behind them that, like your guest said, they need to fill airtime because they want to make money. And I think there are a lot of good reporters that want to report the nitty gritty, but they can't because of the corporations and their bottom line. So here's what we need to start thinking, my fellow Chicagoans and liberals. We need to be thinking about making a push to break up these large corporations like we did Standard Oil, Howard Hughes back in the day. When was that, in the 30s or 40s, where we broke up, I believe it was Standard Oil was his company, because he was starting to affect the politics in the area and people's freedoms. And they dragged him into court. We need to start doing that with all these gigantic corporations. And I'll end it with one last thing. I challenge anybody in your listening audience to think of one social ill that does not benefit a corporation. From COVID to breast cancer to alcoholism, all of those social ills, they make money off of us, just like war, which is, look up Smedley Butler and his book, War is a Scam, I believe it was. And I think his name was Smedley Butler. He was a former Marine. They've done this before. They've tried their coups before, and it's happening all over again, right down to the loss of our republic, because it's about them making money. And that's my point.
You said a whole lot. Do you want to respond to him, Bryce?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with almost everything you're saying, except I do believe that the media, the entity itself, is the problem, mostly because you shouldn't separate the media from big corporations. The media are big corporations. CNN is a massive corporation, and they rely on advertising from other massive corporations. Times corporation, they take advertising from massive corporations. All of these entities, they are owned by the same people who own other media. They are owned by the same people who invest in all these defense companies and arms companies. So I think it's a lot more close knit than than what you were implying, because they are the media. They don't own the media. They are the media. And that's why I think it's so important to seek out alternative media. The best journalists, they'll look and dig on the stories that the corporate media, that's within the realm of acceptable discourse. But outside of that, their talents are being wasted. So it's important to seek out alternative media like this show, Santita, like other magazines out there. There's so many, I can't even name them all, but they do exist, and it's important to support that sort of media, and it's important to consume that kind of media, because those are the only places where you get even a simulation of the truth.
You are what you eat.
I will say that, yeah, you are what you eat, and if you consume uncritical assessments from the U.S. intelligence community, well, then you're going to go along with what they say. You're going to see the world the way they do. You're going to see Vladimir Putin as a lunatic dictator hell-bent on restoring the Soviet Union, despite the fact that there's no evidence for that, despite the fact that Putin himself has repeatedly said, no, that's insane. Like, we couldn't do that. We can't reconquer the Soviet Union. We can't invade Ukraine. How are we going to sustain that? Every time Putin says that, Western media ignores it. They say, oh, he's just playing with us. Oh, he's just lying. He's just hiding his true intentions. And if you consume that kind of media, well, then you'll start to believe that too. But I think you're exactly right about the need to break up these big corporations. I'm not a huge fan of Joseph Biden, but one of the things that he has done that I think is a very positive development in American politics is he appointed Lina Khan to the FTC chair, the Federal Trade Commission. And Lina Khan is, a young and up-and-coming radical thinker, especially when it comes to antitrust. She wrote one of the major papers attacking Amazon's monopoly power and reinterpreting how the U.S. court system handles monopoly power. And so putting her in such a high position was a very positive development. Only time will tell how much she can actually get done based on the constraints of, the politics of this country. But so far, it does seem to be encouraging. And so I think that's the type of thing we should support. Eventually, yes, that should extend to breaking up these defense contractors, and especially breaking up the big media. There are about 6 companies that own almost every piece of media that we consume. Is that democratic?
No. And we should know who owned the media. Remember when they were starting MSNBC a little more than 20 years ago, the number one show in the early 2000s was the Phil Donahue Show. He came out of retirement to help this progressive network, or so he thought, get on its feet. And he had their number one show, but he was put off the air. Why? Because he was against the invasion of Iraq, and they removed him from the air. I told you, you don't have any friends in media. What you have to do is make sure that the media does what you need to do, which is give you good report. Back in just a minute. Whew, this is a lot. But please bring up that I've got a lot of callers, but I want you to bring up the Nazi piece. I don't know. I'm sure Robert knows so much. Can you repeat that? Because I know I've had you repeat it like over and over and over again, but people need to hear this. Because I'm concerned about us sending these brown and black and indigenous soldiers and Asian soldiers into hostile territory, Bryce.
Yeah, I'll get back. I'll go at length on air, but yeah, I mean, like, we're supporting Nazis. It's plain and simple. The open Nazis, flag waving, card carrying, packs having, Nazi saluting, like Nazis are over there, and they're integrated into the Ukrainian military, the same military that we're providing billions of dollars to, and that we support them. It seems like Nazi is a term that's kind of diluted over.
Sending Shapiro through.
Around Nazi. But no, these are actual Nazis, swastika having Nazis. They have SS patches, and they believe in ridiculous Nazi ideas of ethnic purity, which is useful to us because their ethnic purity means that they're anti-Russian and they're pro-Ukrainian. So they want to be oriented closer to Ukraine and the West than they want to be to the Slavs and Russians. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the U.S. has a long history of supporting Nazism. In fact, like I keep saying, last year, the United States and the Ukraine were the only two countries to vote against a resolution in the United Nations that condemned Nazism. The only two countries. What do we make of that?
Robert, is that crazy?
Can we look at ourselves in the mirror?
Robert, is that crazy?
That's not crazy at all. Just look at the analog from history. I know that everybody hates Nazis now, and everybody agrees unanimously that that is a bad thing for the most part. But if you look at America in the 1930s, that was not the sentiment at all that you had in this country. You had an entire brown shirt movement both here and in many Western European nations. Everybody didn't hate Hitler. Everybody started hating Hitler after they figured out that he was wrong. At the time, he had supporters around the world, and particularly in the United States of America. This is kind of like what happened with Dr. King. Everybody loves Dr. King now, but when Dr. King was alive, wasn't nobody loving Dr. King the way that they like Dr. King now. The same way that everyone hates Hitler now. When Hitler was still alive and still working in Germany, there was humongous amounts of support for him, particularly from Western nations. And we have to go back and not let these people whitewash the history around
60 seconds, everybody.
I'll stand by.
The United States did everything they could to not go to war with them.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it said that the Nazis didn't lose the war; they relocated. Afterwards, they joined the U.S. The Nazi intelligence agency was reconstituted in Germany to help fight the Soviets after the Cold War. You know, we had the Gala organization, Reinhard Gala. He was head of Nazi intelligence in the East, and then we just made him chief intelligence officer of West Germany. And we brought in several NATO people, or several Nazi commanders into NATO leadership. So NATO has its roots in Nazism. And then, you know, we all know Operation Paperclip, using Nazis to help with our rocket science program. We helped get rap lines to, you know, secure Nazis in South America. You know, we have a very close relationship with Nazis.
10 seconds.
And it's the reason that Nazism exists today in full force is in part because the U.S. fostered it.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Santita Jackson, Joe, talking about Ukraine today. Hope you're getting some information that you're not getting from corporate media. Hope you're getting some information because we need to know, as the president and NATO, well, the president particularly, President Biden beats the drums of war. Why are they being beaten? What is the goal? Are you willing to go fight that fight in Ukraine? And what about blowback here? I mean, we continue to think that that they will never touch us in the United States. That's not true. We haven't even gotten over the Civil War, and that was 150 plus years ago. Think about that, everybody. Ooh, before we get back to Bryce Green of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting and the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push civil rights lawyer, attorney Robert Patillo, who also has his own radio show, WAOK, on, excuse me, the iconic talk radio station in Atlanta. Every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. You don't want to miss it. It is a great, great show. All right, Chaparral, you're having a big event in memory of your son. You're doing such great work in the name of Courtney Copeland. You're having a big gala. What's going on?
Yes, Santita. On March 5th, we are having our first annual Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation Gala. It is in memory of my son, Courtney Copeland, who was murdered on March 4th, 2016. So this will be his 6-year anniversary of his passing. And what we did with this foundation is we actually turned our pain into a purpose. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually continuing the work that Courtney actually started. When Courtney was alive, he actually was helping the homeless. He was helping single mothers. He was helping children get back and forth to school, just out the goodness of his heart. These are things that he was doing. So at the foundation, we continue that. And this charity ball actually goes to fund these projects, like helping single mothers, our back to school program, as well as also our Christmas toy giveaway and our Feed the Homeless program. All of these programs go directly back to the community. So every dollar raised is funded back into the foundation. We take no money personally from the foundation. It just goes to fund our programs. So we're asking everyone to come out and support us on March 5th. You can get your tickets at eventbrite.com, and the keyword is the Courtney Copeland Memorial Foundation. You can also, if you can't make it yourself, I know a lot of your listeners, Santita, I greatly appreciate, have made small donations as well as purchase tickets for mothers who have lost children. We ask and we encourage you to do so as well. And you can do that at www.copelandmemorial.com, or you can reach out to us on Facebook. Give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546, and we ask that you support this great cause in Charity Ball. Thank you, Santita.
Chaparral Wells, everybody. Sending you much love, Chaparral. Oh, boy, we've had a lot to talk about with that. Everybody, please call Chaparral at 708-526-4546, and please support that foundation. Let me go to Chris from Wheaton. Chris, what's on your mind, Chris?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
Hope you're doing well today.
Good morning. Wonderful hearing your voice.
Always, thank you. I appreciate that. The thing, I've used this lyric before, I believe, on this very show, but the thing that keeps coming to mind is the St. Curtis Mayfield song, "Don't Worry If There's Hell Below, We're All Gonna Go." Meaning, we have a tendency as American progressives to continually and frankly correctly point to America's violence, lying, manipulation on the world stage, and America is involved on every level across the world, militarily, psychologically, and beyond. However, I feel that it's important that we don't lose focus on the realities of who Vladimir Putin is and who Russia is on the world stage. And anytime I get to flex my little political science, international relations degree, I get great recompense and reward because they're not very common. But I will say that while it is correct for all of your panel, your esteemed panel, to point out the unbelievably unpleasant effect of American military-industrial complex across the world, Vladimir Putin is not a good person. It's not a thing. And I said it last time I called, and I say this respectfully. Bryce. I'm sorry, I can't remember his last
Bryce
name.
Green.
But,
yes.
Bryce Green, yes, who's dropping all kinds of truth, and I appreciate it. But, when we make that comparison, it's a very facile comparison to say that, like, oh, what if Russia put bombs in Canada? No, it would be. We're talking about national sovereignty here. If Ukraine's like, hey, help us out, do this, yes, I mean, we know there's political implications, but this is about sovereignty as well. And I just find it a bit rich when we're constantly talking about America, you know, in such a way as like this massive destabilization force, which it is. You know, I remember last week when Mr. Floyd was on talking about Syria, America in Syria, as if Russia is the number one supporter of Bashar al-Assad's al-Awad regime that dropped chemical weapons and barrel bombs on its own people. You know, like they have, you know, spread chemical weapons more profusely than any other, administration in world history. You know, all I'm saying in a nutshell is that.
Chris?
He dropped.
Oh, Chris dropped. Chris, you dropped just as you were saying in a nutshell. Let me go to George from the South Side. George, and Chris, you can call back so you can finish your comment if you can get through. George from the South Side, what's on your mind? Thank you for calling.
Oh, thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
Santita. I find myself a little concerned about the conversation that I've heard so far. A lot of it seems to be avoiding the reality of who Vladimir Putin is. We need to be reminded that he came up as a doctrinaire member of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union and was a career officer of the KGB. Mm-hmm. During his career, he is credited with numerous murders, the worst of which occurred as the Cold War was ending and the people of German nationality and what was done East Germany were publicly displaying their desire to be reunited with their brothers and sisters in the West. As a full colonel in the KGB, he was in charge of all Soviet KGB operations in East Germany, and he was the de facto head of the East German intelligence operation known as the Stasi. And in an attempt to stave off the reunification of Germany, they committed numerous murders and disappearances in East Germany. I don't think Vladimir Putin is crazy, but he is a ruthless Machiavellian. And he does not have the internal restraints that you would expect from the head of state in the West.
Based upon what, George?
Pardon me?
Well, based upon what? I mean, tell me that, because I'm only asking you that, and I want you to stay right here because I'm not trying to put you off. I want you to engage the panel because I appreciate your perspective, and I think that it's important for us to hear your perspective and talk it out. You know what I mean? I have not met a world leader, and I've met more than a few, who is not possessed of a healthy ego. They're not all ruthless, but they do have healthy egos. So I kind of put that off to the side. I also know how power works, and so do you. Power, unfortunately, involves a lot of things that are not so good. That's why I knew that Reverend had gone as far in this presidential thing as he could go, because there's some things I know that my father's just not going to do. Okay? So there's that. A lot of people who are involved in our government now, who are elected officials, increasingly, they're quite forward about being part of the intelligence community, but that's not new. That's just not new. So I'm trying to find out, what you're hanging your hat on here, because we've made all of these attacks on President Putin. Number one, we don't even call him President Putin, which I think is an insult to the Russian people. The fact is, KGB, yeah, he was, and okay, and so what? He has an ego, okay, yeah, and so what? We broke the agreement. We broke the agreement, George, with the Soviet Union and with Russia. We said we were not going to move eastward, and that is exactly what we've done. I mean, how can you function on the world stage when you're not trustworthy, when your word is not your bond? George?
My reaction to that, Santita, is that Putin is an oligarch who rules Russia with a handful of oligarchs.
So is our government. The oligarchs run our government. Senator Dick Durbin said more than 10 years ago, the fact is the bankers run the place. He was talking about Capitol Hill. Remember when the head of Goldman Sachs went to Nancy Pelosi in 2008 and gave her a 2.5-page paper and said, either give me $700+ billion today or I'm shutting down the American economy. Remember that?
Yes, I do, and I'm simply trying to make a point.
Okay. And please let me. I want to give you the runway to make it.
I don't think that there is any American president or senator who has enriched himself to the point of $285 billion.
You'll never know that. You will never know that. You'll never know that. You will not know that. You walk out of the presidency, trust and believe, making a lot of money. You do. I'm not mad at you. I just wish you'd let me know that frontally so I can know maybe the deals you're cutting when you're president. That's part of the deal, George.
Okay, I'll make two small points. Does the name Victor Yushchenko bring up any memories?
Yeah, does Dr. King bring up any memories to you? Because we're still trying to figure out who killed him. Anytime that the FBI got on their, they are alleged to have stood on their desks in the office in Atlanta when they found out that he had been killed. They stood up and cheered. Huh?
Okay, well, Victor Yushchenko was a democratically elected president of Ukraine, and he was poisoned with dioxin by Russian operatives. There has been a campaign of intimidation and terror going on as long as Putin's been head of Russia, with people who have fled Russia because they were dissidents, and they still are pursued by Russian intelligence and poisoned in other countries in the world. And I would simply like to say that the enormous amount of military personnel and hardware that the Russians have put on the borders of Ukraine, and the fact that they have occupied 8% of Ukraine's territory now for 8 years, suggests that they are the aggressors. And I would think that for another point of view on your show, you might want to contact the Ukrainian consulate in Chicago, which is at Penn and Huron. I'm sure they have a spokesperson who would like to discuss these issues with your family and with you.
Oh, you mean with the Santita Jackson Show family, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to be clear. I'm not speaking on behalf of Reverend or my mother or my brothers or my sister. I'm not doing that. But I hear you. But I think that what we are doing here, and I want you to stay right here because I want Bryce and Robert to respond to you before I go to the other callers. And stay right here because that's why I wanted to engage you and give you this runway, because I think that your perspective is very important. But I think that we are not measuring everyone by the same yardstick. In power gets you all the money you want. And oligarchs run the United States of America. Who made money? Who got paid during the pandemic? It wasn't us. It was mom and pop businesses went down the drain. Amazon, the big box stores, all the multi-billion-dollar corporations, which are on track to become trillion-dollar corporations. They're the ones who made money. They're the ones who were allowed to flourish. Oligarchs run this place. Dictator, we don't even have our voting rights. And I cannot get my president, who I said, I'm going to vote for you because you're going to do for me. I cannot even get him to sign an executive order which would last for the duration of his presidency, but at least it would protect my right to vote. I can't get him to do that. Stay right there. Bryce, and then you, Robert.
Well, I'll respond to the general thrust of what's been said, is that, no, I don't think anyone here is denying that Putin is a bad guy. I don't think anyone's denying that Putin has autocratic tendencies and that he's done a lot of bad things to people in his country, especially during his history with the KGB. I'm less clear on that, but I can only assume it's not good. But I think we need to be absolutely clear in that there is no world in which you can compare the damage that Russia has done to the world to the damage that the United States has done to the world. Like, I asked the listeners to name me the worst thing that Vladimir Putin has done in his term as president of Russia. And while you're thinking of that, you try and find, I guarantee you can find about 4 or 5 things that the U.S. has done that's worse in that same time period. Like, Vladimir Putin has never done anything like what the United States did to Iraq. Figures range from about 1 to 1.5, some as high as 2 million dead as a result of that invasion. Has Putin done anything remotely like that? Libya was one of the African countries with the highest standard of living, and we destroyed it. We destroyed their infrastructure. We destroyed their roads. We destroyed their power systems. And now that country is in a civil war. And I'm sure we all remember seeing those images of open-air slave markets. Have we seen anything like that from Putin? Anything remotely like that?
Wait a minute. And we killed their president while he was riding under the white flag of surrender. We killed him publicly, and then we laid him out like he was not even human as he decomposed. And that's how we put him in state. Really?
And if we want to look at like some of the turmoil in the Middle East, I mean, like you talk about Syria. Well, why did Russia get involved with Syria? Well, you can even ask former Secretary of State John Kerry or even President Joe Biden. They said this. They said that Russia got involved because the United States was funding and supporting radical Islamic jihadis, parts of Al-Qaeda, parts of al-Nusra. We were sending weapons to them with the hope that they would be able to overthrow Assad, and then we'd be able to step in and, have our hand in there. That didn't work because Putin got involved, and he helped Assad fight off these radical Islamic extremists. I mean, that's not propaganda. That's a fact. And that's admitted to by John Kerry and by Joe Biden. And so, yeah, you might not like Assad. He's committed a lot of crimes. You might not like Putin. He's committed a lot of crimes. But they don't even come close. Don't even come close to the crimes that the U.S. has done. And I've only scratched the surface of the last 20 years. I'm missing things. I'm missing large swaths.
You're sounding
of our
like
history.
Dr. King, which is what got Dr. King called an asset of a foreign government. And it got him taken out. Because I have Kota Ibushi, who said, you sound like a Russian asset. That is so insulting. You mean to tell me, stop that? Because we can have conversations and points of view without doing that. Without doing that, and how would you know what a Russian asset? No, let me ask you. I want to know why. How do you know what a Russian asset looks like? How do you know the Russian talking points? Because I certainly don't know them. I don't understand what you're talking about. Stay right there, because I want you to stay with us on my YouTube channel just for a few minutes after we get off the air, because I would like for Robert to respond as well. Robert.
Yes, and this is part of the issue that I've always had with the standard Western education in foreign policy, because it's always filtered through the levels of U.S. and Western propaganda. So if you look at Napoleonic Wars, for example, the way that it's generally taught coming up is that Napoleon was a crazy person who was a little short man who had a short man complex that just went around invading people for no reason. But then you get a graduate degree, you start realizing, one, Napoleon was average height for his time. He wasn't really that short. Secondarily, most of the things he did made perfect sense. And the continental system he put in place was frankly brilliant. And Europe would have been better off in many ways if they had actually listened to him instead of them forming all these alliances against him. You look at World War II. They say, well, Hitler was a crazy madman bent on world domination. Then you look a little bit further into it, and you realize this is basically rooted in 18th century European geopolitics. And what he did was really not that dissimilar to what other European nations were doing to each other at the same period of time. It was only after the war they really decided that he was evil. You turn to the Cold War context, where it was these evil Ruskies trying to destroy the American way of life, when in reality, reality, America was doing as much to them as they were doing to us. It was a battle of ideals over who would have hegemonic power throughout the global geopolitical sphere. So we have to start being more complex in the way that we look at foreign policy decisions, and not simply buy into the media propaganda sphere, which tries to convince us that there are good guys and bad guys in this. So there are crazy people and rational actors. In reality, everybody's the hero of their own story, and you have to understand both sides of the discussion so you can come out to really truth in what we're doing, and not fall into another situation as we've had the last 20 years of endless foreign wars with no purpose. And then after 20 years, we realize, hey, why did we do that? So let's try to think of those on the front end, not after we cost millions of lives around the globe.
I challenge anyone who believes that these are Russian talking points, that this is Russian propaganda, that I'm a Russian asset. I challenge you to pick out what I'm saying and find out what's not true. Everything I'm saying is backed up by plenty of facts. I mean, if you read my article, I link sources to every factual claim that I make. And I challenge you to find something that's not true. The fact that you think it's Russian propaganda just shows how wrapped up in the Western media ecosystem that someone is. Like, if pointing out the crimes of American empire means that you are serving Russia, then we can't talk honestly about what's really going on. I mean, Putin's bad. I mean, yeah, you're not getting any points for saying that. Vladimir Putin doesn't care what you think of him. What matters is that how we can affect our own country. What matters is that how we can stop the American imperial war machine from stamping out more lives, from taking more of the resources away from the American people.
Hold on, because I want you to speak to this. I only have a couple more minutes before we're on the air. Someone said that there was a comment made about Hitler. No one here is supporting Hitler at all. As a matter of fact, would you please let us know how we're supporting Nazis? Bryce, just say that one more time.
We talk about Hitler and Nazism as like this grand evil, but throughout the post-war period, it was the United States who took the Nazi intelligence apparatus and then used it and rehabilitated it to fight the Soviet Union. Like, we used Nazi intelligence officers to staff the intelligence agencies of NATO, of West Germany, of several Eastern European countries.
But let me say this. Let me say this. Because the fact is, it is an evil. And what Hitler did was evil. But the fact is, we can be as amoral as we want to be. Because in the United Nations last year, only the Ukraine and the United States did what, Bryce?
There was a resolution in the United Nations that was condemning Nazism, and Nazi glorification and iconography. And it passed, but the only two countries to vote against that resolution were the United States and the Ukraine. Now, why is that? Why is it that the U.S. and Ukraine are the only two countries in the world who refuse to condemn Nazism in the United Nations? I think we have to ask ourselves that, and I think if we look closer, you can see that current Ukraine military is integrated with openly Nazi elements. I urge you to look up what's called the Azov Battalion. You know, it's about 1,000 strong, open Nazis in the Ukrainian military. In fact, Western media, they actively spread Nazi propaganda. There was an event where a woman was like holding an AK-47, and Western media was like, "Yeah, look at how Ukrainians are prepared to defend their country." Well, that woman turned out to be being trained by the Azov Battalion, by open Nazis. The Western media didn't report that; they completely ignored it. It was reported in other countries with more honest media. It was reported in Irish press, Czech press, German press, but not the U.S. press. We hide our involvement with Nazis. We hide the truth from the American people.
And and that's why look, I'm glad I'm part of alternative media, so to speak. And I'm not saying that I won't do things with corporate media. No. But you have to be clear on what we're looking at. Be clear on what we're looking at, everybody. Be clear and get the history. Don't be afraid of it. And let's stop all of this name calling. Russian talking points. I realize some of you are trolling. I get that too. But stop it. They called Dr. King a communist. They sure did. How did this man unto his death
He was called a communist. Even President Reagan, as he signed the Martin Luther King birthday bill, he made some offhand comment at the signing ceremony about Dr. King. Well, he was affiliated with communists. Stop it. And why is it that the communists gave black people who were really seeking to break out of Jim Crow, why is it that they gave them comfort and not our own country? Enough. Enough. These are not Russian talking points. You don't even want to you don't want to send yourself, and you don't want to send your loved ones to war. That's what we're talking about today. I want it to stop. I want some peace. I want a peace dividend, and that's the end of that. We're going to talk about this some more on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Back in just a minute. Love you. See you tomorrow. Do you want to say anything else, my asset friend and company? No, but but when I think about Dr. King being called a communist, Bryce and Robert, I'm like, oh, come on, you guys, really, as if that's going to shut somebody up. Are you kidding me?
What it does is it shuts people's brains off. Like when people have been raised in this propaganda system where Russia is the ultimate evil, where the communists are the ultimate evil, all someone has to do is accuse you of being on their side. And then all of a sudden, I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to take the facts that you're presenting into account, whether or not they're true or not, because you're a Russian asset. And I think it short circuits the logical processes that are normal to human beings. It short circuits them. It says, I don't have to think this through. My country, right or wrong. Tony Blinken wouldn't lie to me. Joe Biden wouldn't lie to me. But the Russians, they're evil. They're definitely lying. Well, just look at the facts. Take a few hours and just look at the media reports. Look at the actual facts. Do some Googling. You can find this stuff on Google. You can find the truth if you were persistent enough, if you cared enough. But if you just sit there and lap up what the American media feeds you, well, then you're going to be very confused when someone brings an alternative viewpoint. You're going to be very confused when someone points out that America has done things far worse than Vladimir Putin could ever dream of. And once we're able to honestly confront that fact, then we can talk about international relations in an honest, productive, serious way. But until then, there's really nothing you can do. There's really nothing you can talk about.
I have to tell you both. This is when I can understand how Dr. King was called a communist, and I can understand how he could not get in a black pulpit. There were only a handful of pulpits he could get into in the United States. I can understand why he was so depressed leading up to his death that he was going to leave the movement. He said, perhaps I've become a hindrance. This is what we do. We don't appreciate truth tellers until they're dead. Well, stop that. If you disagree with what's being said here, then disagree. But you don't have to disparage. That's immature. We're not going to get anywhere. I appreciate George for calling in because, he was like, oh, this was stuck in his craw. But I have to tell you, for me and my portion, I want the truth. I want the truth. And I think that we're not getting the whole story. We're not getting the whole story. There's a lot that the corporate media have missed about this story. And I know because I have lived with the corporate media missing the black story, my family story, all of that down through the years. I've seen it. I've seen too much of it. So my thing is, and I know who gets protected here. People who protect the corporations get protected. The people who try to protect the people get destroyed. It's just that simple. And you ought to be tired of that. Everybody exalts Malcolm X. Everybody exalts Dr. King, Medgar. These people were hated in their lifetime. Dr. King was hated. Hated. And was hounded by J. Edgar Hoover, who sent him, knowing that Dr. King had a history of depression. That is documented. Because the intelligence community, they know your psychological makeup. He sent him not only letters, but he sent his wife tapes. He sent him files that were designed to drive him to suicide. Who does that? The only people who are spied upon by our intelligence communities today are Black Lives Matter. They don't spy on these white terrorist cells who are trying to kill people. Nobody who charged the Capitol a year ago is going to jail, for real. Does that not bother you? Russian asset. Well, who are these people who charged Capitol Hill January 6th? Have you asked that question? Are you that? You're more concerned. Oh, you're more concerned about Bryce and maybe Robert. Something about this is not right. Okay, this is crazy. You all go on and say that. Oh, Coda, bless your heart. George was spot on because he described Putin as a dedicated Machiavellian. Anyone who does power politics, they're Machiavellian because that's how the game is played. Stop it. Just stop. Power behaves a particular way, and that's why you have to be careful with it because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why you have to hold on to God's unchanging hand because when you get power, you want to make sure you behave a certain way with it. It doesn't have to corrupt you, but the likelihood is that it will. When you can get anything in the world, when you can do anything in the world, have anything in the world, it will absolutely rot you from the inside out. That's why you have to be very careful. And the more power you get, the more wedded to God you need to be. Because as my pastor's wife, Mrs. Luther May Evans, may she rest in heavenly peace, said, the only big shot I know is God. She said, Jesus. And since Jesus didn't behave as a big shot, nobody should behave as a big shot. How about that? You all go on and say what you need to say. I see this all the time. I see the names that my father's been called down through the years. And, people like him now because he's 80 and he has Parkinson's. Okay? Like they loved Muhammad Ali because he was sick. But when Muhammad Ali was on his feet, people tried to make sure he didn't eat. His wife had to go in, Khalila Ali had to go into her college fund and help feed the family and not let him know it. Please. Robert and Bryce, you have anything to say?
Well, one thing I find funny, this, since we're on the other side, I can be extra nerdy. When people talk about someone being Machiavellian, they're always talking about the prince. And they have to remember that the prince was actually written as almost a job interview application for Machiavelli trying to advise the princes on how to maintain power. But if you look at some of Machiavelli's other works such as Discourses and Livy, he very much has a completely different tone. So even when people are talking about someone being quote-unquote Machiavellian, they're not actually talking about the totality of the works of Machiavelli, but really simply the media portrayal or the summaries that we get of the totality of what he meant. So I encourage people not to just take these words at face value, but to really dig into the actual political philosophy of what was being said. And even taking the Prince as the seminal work of Machiavelli, we have to understand that much of what he said, if you take it from a cold perspective, it seems that it's untorn or something along those lines. But in reality, it's the same form of power politics that we all employ in our everyday life. You are either going to get ran over, and if Putin had allowed it to, America would have been more than happy to chop up those natural gas and oil resources that are still within the Russian borders and to control those pipelines. He has to have nationalistically the ability to maintain his borders. As much as Americans talk about patriotism, we have to understand other countries have the rights and the abilities to defend their people. You have to have that balance on the international level. So we have to stop looking at things as if there's these irrational actors in foreign policy, because if you're an irrational actor, your nation is not going to last for 20 or 30 years. So whenever you start hearing them throw out words like madman, insane, killer, X, Y, and Z, those are propaganda terms. There's no legal definition for madman. It's just something that they do to paint these people in a certain light so you think they're going to act irrationally, which gives the military-industrial complex and the media mainstream media, the ability to turn this into almost a Marvel action movie instead of something actually going on in foreign policy that's being handled by experts. Let's get out of the, let's become more sophisticated thinkers when it comes to these things instead of simply going along with the narrative that's being pushed forward.
Well, and to say that, I mean, because all of these criticisms are personal. They're not even political. I mean, they're not
even challenging our analysis. They're not. Whether or not you believe Vladimir Putin is like Machiavellian or if he's evil, I'll accept that he's Machiavellian.
I will.
But no one in U.S. politics gets anywhere without being similarly Machiavellian. They just have a different set of rules that they're playing by.
Wait a minute. Dr. King said, "Evil men plot, therefore good men must what? Plan." There's a wonderful, mini documentary on LBJ that was on CNN last night, and they're going to play the second part tonight. You've got to see it, everybody, because it let you know that it helped you to see that Dr. King, Andrew Young, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, and Reverend C.T. Vivian, and Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and Dorothy Cotton, and on, that all these folks, and the president and the vice president, and on, they were playing chess with each other. Dr. King walked into the Oval Office and said, "Okay," and then he walked out. He said, "Okay, we're gonna have to give Lyndon Johnson, we're gonna have to give President Johnson the power so we can get our Voting Rights Act. That's what we're gonna have to do." This is the way this works. You just hope that the person in power is fighting for the least of these, not just for you. That's not about being selfish. See, my religion teaches me that you are supposed to, that Jesus said, "That which you've done unto the least of these, you've also done unto me." I want to know if you are caring for the least of these. Because if you care for the least of these, the most humble, the people who are in the most trouble, I know that everybody else is going to be okay. That's what I want to know. Russia would be okay if they didn't have so much oil. That's what they do. That's why they got to deal with Cuba, which is a world away, because they do oil. That's why we're messing with them over oil, not over ideology. We don't care about communism. The Chinese are communists, right? Okay, yeah. Well, they hold a fourth of our debt. We're not so upset with them that we're not indebted to them. They own a fourth of our debt, and another fourth is owned by the Japanese. We don't care about that, everybody. Look it up. Gentlemen, am I telling the truth?
Absolutely.
We don't care about ideology. The British are socialists. They're our special friends. They are our closest friends. That's who they are. Everybody's a socialist, including the Queen, even though she owns it, but she owns everything. She and her family. Come on, y'all. Really? No. Ideology, those are democracy. We don't even care about that. No, we don't. No. Democracy is a means. It's not an end. If democracy were an end, we'd all have a federally protected right to vote. We don't have it. Okay? So much for democracy. The founding fathers didn't trust us that much. We went from a constitutional monarchy to a constitutional republic. He said, I don't know if we're going to give them all of that, but we'll give them some of that. Everything else we've had to fight for. But the founding fathers were enlightened men and, for their time. Yes, men, because they didn't include women in this. But this is how it goes. So everybody, let's, the name calling, just stop it. Stop it. What did Renee, you said Venezuela has oil and we want to stomp them out. Absolutely. That's why we were upset with Chavez. And then Chavez told Major League Baseball, since you come here to get my players, because they want to get players on the cheap. That's why we don't have Black American players anymore. The Washington Post did a wonderful piece on that last year. Where are the Black American players? Well, the Black American players you would have to pay. So we go to South and Central America, primarily to Venezuela. Well, Hugo Chavez said, well, while you're coming here, all of these boys who you pull into the farm team system, they're not going to get to the majors. So what I want you to do is for each of them, I want you to set up a fund for each of them that will help to take care of them if they don't make it to the majors. Oh, they hated Hugo Chavez, but it was personal, right? He's evil. Who, that's not even part of political discourse. Evil, mean, nasty. What? Nobody even talks like that in real politics. In real politics, nobody does that. Stop letting people dumb down your politics. Oh, Putin is these reporters act like they have talked to President Putin. Oh, Putin is this, Putin is that, and he's got all the attention. Do you think Joe Biden doesn't like attention? He's been trying to be president for 40 years. And he kept running and running until he got there. God bless him. Am I lying, guys? Somehow or another, while he was sitting at that desk in the Senate, he said, no, this isn't good enough. He went there trying to be president 50 years ago. Please, get over that. You just hope that someone with all that ego and oomph is going to fight for you. That's what you want. Okay? And Cota, yes, that's right. The Chavez was right. And we cannot get young African Americans, young black kids in Major League Baseball today because we don't want to pay them. You would have to pay these kids from the United States, like you have to pay these basketball players. But no. So we go to a poor country and pay them pennies. You ought to be disgusted by that. So, gentlemen, please have your say before we go. Ooh, say what you need to say. Ooh. I knew I'd enjoy being with you two today because you all are a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I just encourage any listeners, anyone who's still listening, go check out my article. Go check out. There's an excellent podcast on this. If you like podcasts,
send me the link.
Congressional Dish.
Okay.
It's called Congressional Dish. The episode name is Keeping Ukraine. It's by an excellent woman named Jen Briney. She goes into more detail than I do in my article about this whole situation. Like, look at what people in Congress are saying about Ukraine. Look at how U.S. policy has led to this situation. Look at the interest. Look at how the IMF wants to expand economic influence. Look at how NATO wants to expand their military footprint. And then read your history books. I mean, look at how the U.S. has antagonized Russia. Look at how even in the 90s, leading diplomats like George Kennan, the architect of the containment strategy, even George Kennan said that expanding NATO would be bad because it would cause Russia to feel trapped and encircled. And if Russia feels trapped and encircled, you don't know what they might do. And if a nuclear-armed country is trapped and encircled, well, that doesn't make for a safer world, so you guys should not do it. Well, we did it, and now look where we are. And now look at who we're blaming for this current crisis. Propaganda only works like that if you refuse to read your history books. So I encourage you guys to read up. I encourage you, and if you still think that this current situation is still a contest between democracy on America's side and autocracy on Russia's side, then call me. Just call me.
Oh boy, I'm looking. I posted this. I'll repost it again today. Because I think it's important for us to know, to have as much information as we can have, everybody. I just want you to have some information before they call your children. Before they call your children and tell them, you know what, make you hate someone and send them off to war. I mean, really? This is not the way this is supposed to go. Robert Patello, you still there?
I am, and
you are laughing. Why are you laughing?
Well, because we've been through all this so many times before. It's not as if this is a new playbook that they're using. It's not as if this is something surprising. They made a movie about this 25 years ago, Wag the Dog. We know exactly what's going on. You have a president who has a stalled domestic agenda, who has low poll numbers, and he's using this as an opportunity to look strong on the world stage and to change the topic, to change the subject. And wars usually unite the country for at least a period of time, particularly when you're fighting against, the axis of evil. Does anybody remember that? We just kind of picked some countries out of a hat and declared them to be evil, and then they were just evil. I mean, come on. How many times are we going to let them run this same hustle on us and fall for it again and again? Just look at the numbers. You can go on Wikipedia and compare the size of the Russian economy to the size of the American economy. Compare the size of the Russian military to the size of the American military. And then expand that out to look at the size of the NATO nation's military compared to the Russian military. They keep trying to do these comparisons between Russia and Ukraine. No, this is going to be a war between Russia and NATO. And frankly, without nuclear weapons, that's about a 2-week war before they get to Moscow. So Russia is not going to invade. They're simply trying to show to the world that the Western nations have gobbled up so much of Eastern Europe that they are at their doorstep now. And if they just simply abided by the agreement from 1990, we wouldn't be in this position currently. And there was going to be nothing to stop NATO and the West from gobbling up more nations and boxing them in even further until Russia stood up and made us think about it. And now we're back at the negotiating table. So in the end, Putin still wins by getting us back to the table to try to stop the expansion.
Well,
someone brought up that this was about sovereignty, like about Ukrainian sovereignty. And that's sort of been the propaganda line that Tony Blinken and Ned Price and all of them have been sticking to. They're saying, like, we don't necessarily want Ukraine to join NATO, but what this is about is Ukraine's right to decide whether or not they want to join NATO. As if the U.S. has ever given a flying flip about sovereignty from other nations. Like, we have invaded, bombed, occupied nations that we don't like from time immemorial. And to say that all of a sudden we're concerned about sovereignty, that spits in the face of history and that insults the intelligence of their audience. And that only works, again, I keep harping on this, it only works if you have a population that's soaked in the American media environment. The media environment that'll recount U.S. propaganda without any critical analysis. I mean, just like go do yourself a favor. Go look through the New York Times, Washington Post, look at CNN headlines, and look at how many of them start with U.S. intelligence says. Look at how many of them say that. And then do your homework. Look at all the times the U.S. intelligence agencies have lied blatantly, bold-faced, without shame, and then go back and look at that. Go back and ask, does the New York Times let us know that the intelligence agencies are notoriously unreliable? No, of course not. Does the New York Times tell us that that the intelligence agencies haven't provided any evidence to the public or to their NATO allies, Germany and France? No, they won't tell you that because they're there to support the State Department. They're there to support the Defense Department. They're there to support U.S. policy and to manufacture consent in the general public. That's their function. That's their function. And the more you study media, the more you study history, the more that becomes clear as day. I mean, just look at Operation Mockingbird. I mean, this is a deliberate policy. This is a deliberate policy of managing the public mind in the United States. It's a deliberate policy of controlling the narrative and to keep out inconvenient facts from the realm of discussion. And anyone who, throws around the term like Russian asset or propagandist or you're helping to narrow the spectrum of debate. And I think you should really look closely at that. Examine it closely, think deeply, and think structurally.
And don't do it. We need robust debate. That's the only way you're going to keep the society free. We're watching our rights being whittled away.
People to keep calling in.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're off the air now, but we're on Facebook Live, but people are still here. They are, and they are engaged. They are engaged. I took as many calls as I could because I wanted them to be able to say to you what they needed to say. But a lot of people had a lot to say. And mind you, this is the largest progressive talk radio station in the country. And you're getting called a Russian asset here. Wow. But I mean, if this were Trump doing this, President Trump, we'd be in the streets. But if a Democrat does it, we have to think more critically than that.
I don't know if I quite agree with that. I mean, okay. I think that if Trump was doing this, I think that there'd be even less chance for negotiations. Because if you remember, the whole Trump is a Russian asset that started a while ago.
I'm talking about our reaction to this. Because I feel Democrats not asking questions and standing down. That's all I'm talking about. Because of course, Trump was a Russian asset. That is the rap on him. I get it. But I'm saying our reaction. We're not questioning. We don't question Democrats. We question Republicans. It's a reflexive thing, and everybody's doing it. It's just not healthy for this. It's not healthy for.
I think that they would be questioning. They would be questioning whether or not Trump is being hard enough on Putin. I don't think they'd be asking the serious questions about why we're there, about who stands to benefit. They'd be asking, why hasn't Trump, sent troops? Why hasn't Trump attacked Russia first yet? Is he a Russian asset? Does he serve the Russians? What do they have on him? Do they have that P tape?
Oh gosh. I'm just over all of it.
Derails. Yeah, it derails any discussion about Russia. It derails any discussion about politics. It's a new Red Scare. I mean, even in class when I was young, we were taught that the McCarthy era was a stain on American history. We were taught that was something that it was an excess of paranoia. But we're right back to where we were then. We're right back to the point where someone can say, "Oh, you're a Russian asset." Someone serious on media can say, "Oh, this person's a Russian asset," and be taken seriously. That's a dangerous state of affairs.
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
we need to really look back at it.
I want you to speak to, if Robert's still there, I want you to speak to Cota, and Cota, I like to engage people. Next time you should call in, Cota. Cota said, I listen to this show every single day, and Bryce hasn't taken Putin to task for any of his actions, which I find deeply questionable.
I mean, why would I? I mean, everyone knows that Putin's bad. That's not really in question. What the question is, and what really ought to be discussed, is how the U.S. brought this situation to a head. How the U.S. activities, how U.S. contributed to the situation, and what we can do to de-escalate. I mean, if you want me to talk about how bad Putin is, how his country isn't free, I mean, I can, but you don't need to go to alternative media for that. You can go to CNN. They'll tell you all about it. And, he's not a good guy. I like I said, I don't see the point in saying that. Everyone else is saying it. And if you look at the facts, if you look at the history, Vladimir Putin hasn't done anything on the level that the United States has done. That's just a fact. Like, does Vladimir Putin have an equivalent of Iraq? Does he have an equivalent of Yemen, of Gaza, of Afghanistan? Like, there's nothing he has done that even comes remotely close. So yeah, I mean, he's bad. Like, there are a lot of bad guys on the world stage, but it's important to look in the mirror and understand our actions, our activities, our dangerous role in the world. And yeah, so like, criticizing Putin, I mean, if that's a prerequisite to get you to listen to me, then I think that it's sort of falling into what I was talking about how it's narrowing the spectrum of debate. Like, yeah, Vladimir Putin's bad. That's not especially new.
It's not new, and you get out here on the world stage and you find that power is corrupting. And a lot of people have done a lot of bad things. What we're trying to do is not have a war here today, right here, right now. Stay right here on that. Stop thinking in terms of good guys, bad guys. This is not cops and robbers. This is not playtime, everybody. These are real people's lives who are at stake over there and over here. We don't need to, the Bible tells you to study war no more. And my father said, you do best what you study the most. We study war a lot. And that needs to stop. Stop. We need to feed people. We need to get people well. We need to build schools, academic and vocational, so that people and artistic, so that people's dreams and aspirations and gifts can be nurtured, so that we can develop people and help them to actualize the vision that God sent them here to be. That's what we need to do. Period. And I'm going to stay right there on that. And I'm going to bring people like Bryce on and Robert Patillo who are going to challenge you, who are going to challenge me, who are going to challenge all of us. I'm going to continue to do that so that we can grow. That's right, Pet Granny. Dennis Kucinich wanted a Department of Peace, and people tried to laugh him off the stage, and that was my guy. I supported Dennis Kucinich.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Department of Peace, what's wrong with it? Why is that a joke? Why is that a joke? I'm sorry, Bryce.
Oh, no, I was just saying that, like, if people are still holding on to like the Biden administration's line, I'd be happy to do like a formal debate style with someone that you think can represent that side better.
I will do that.
I don't want people going away thinking that that we present one side of the story, because the other side is prevalent. The other side is important, and it's important to understand why that point of view is incorrect and incomplete. And so I think the best platform to do that would be a formal debate.
Well, you know what? I'm going to find someone, really. And it will be fair, because, I seek to promote, and I actively promote a healthful, kind, respectful atmosphere on this show. So that is, and I'm going to stay on that. So I will do that. I'm going to do that because I think we need to have a debate, and I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I want to hear it. So you guys, what do you think about that? And Coda, and I thank you, and I thank you for engaging us in this way. Okay, really, I'm glad that everybody has. But I'm going to do that, and Bryce has agreed to debate someone who has a view opposite his. Okay, and they might be a Democrat, right? So what we'll do that. We'll do that. But one of the reasons that I've pushed to have him on this show, I didn't have to push because I produce it. It's my show. He has offered a history lesson. I retweeted his article on what's missing in the corporate media coverage of Ukraine. I've just retweeted that, and I want you to go on my Twitter feed at Santita J, and look at it. And I'm going to repost it on my Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I'll repost it because you need to see this. I said, wow. It's when people pull everything together in one report that you go, wow, this is a context. Okay, we need to have this context. That's all. I think everything needs context. We are part of history. And when you start missing history, you really hurt yourself. You don't know what's really going on. You don't know. And you get to these other countries, as I've been all over the world many times. And there's nothing like getting to another country, Bryce and Robert, and hearing someone else's perspective. Oh boy. Getting on the other side of someone you've demonized or someone you have misunderstood. It'll change you forever. Whether it's in your personal relationships or your institutional relationships, you're changed forever when you find out that you misunderstood someone or misunderstood a situation. And you know that. So I don't know if you're still there, Robert. He might have had to run. But Bryce, you are a gem, and I thank you for being so patient and for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
And I am going to get back to you because I'm going to find someone. I am going to find someone who disagrees with you, but you're in good company. Katrina Vanden Heuvel was almost shouted down on TV just the other week because she was taking a position that was very, very much akin to yours. So you're in good company, young man. Okay, so, oh my gosh. But it's just been this has been great. So thank you all so much for everything. I love you, love you, love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Devin, thank you for a great show. And God bless you all. I'm going to get going. Bryce, have a wonderful day. You'll be hearing from me within the day for sure.
All right.
God bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Everybody.